A K9 dog kept barking furiously upon noticing a stranger's black handbag. What the police discovered inside later left the FBI in utter disbelief. Although Ellie had extensive experience providing security for major events, the Atlanta Marathon was on another level. Months of meticulous planning had been invested in every security detail, from citywide vehicle checkpoints to specialized perimeter fences at the starting and finishing lines. The immense responsibility weighed heavily on Ellie, as one small mistake could compromise the safety of runners, as well as the families, friends, and tourists gathered around the event. Ozzy's barking grew louder as Ellie inched closer to the man in the gray jacket, weaving through participants who were starting to line up. Each bark echoed across the open space, drawing curious glances from those nearby. Ellie gripped Ozzy's leash firmly, aware that any abrupt move might escalate the situation. Stepping within speaking distance, Ellie called out firmly but politely, "Excuse me, sir, are you a participant or spectator? I'd like to ask you a few questions for routine security." She kept her voice steady, projecting the authority of her position without shouting. Ozzy let out another warning bark, still staring the man down. The man looked at Ellie but said nothing. He clutched his sports bag and glanced around. Ellie took a slow, calming breath, preparing herself for what might come next. She was prepared for the possibility that this man could bolt at any second. The man stepped back and bent down as if to put down the black bag. When Ellie ordered, "We need to check your bag." Suddenly the man turned around and ran as fast as he could into the crowd around him. In an instant, the atmosphere became chaotic. Startled runners shouted and jumped aside as the suspect barreled through them. A wave of confusion spread among the crowd. People craned their necks to see what was happening, and some tried to move away from the commotion. Ellie radioed in, her words clipped and urgent. "Suspect fleeing. Gray jacket, large sports bag, heading east. Immediate assistance needed." Ozzy lunged forward, deftly dodging the runner's legs. Ellie followed, not caring about interrupting the marathon when her life was in danger. The man's footsteps made a loud noise on the pavement, but he was clearly having trouble getting through the crowd of runners. Above, the clock counted down to the start of the race, leaving organizers confused as to whether to stop the event. Ellie felt a sense of urgency. If he escaped amid the chaos, he could disappear into the streets with the suspicious backpack. Breathing heavily, she pushed herself to keep up with Ozzy. In those moments, Ellie focused on one goal, not letting him escape. People began shouting, "He went that way," and "Look out," as the man in the gray jacket pushed his way through the crowd. Ellie knew the suspect was familiar with the area. He was heading toward a zone where the barriers between event sections were less secure. If he managed to break outside the official perimeter and merge into the city streets, apprehending him would become significantly more challenging. Yet despite the escalating tension, Ellie felt a surge of confidence. Ozzy chased him, and she knew that once he locked onto a target, he could outmaneuver almost anyone. However, it wasn't just about catching a suspect. It was also about keeping the crowd safe. She silently prayed that the man wouldn't resort to desperate measures, such as detonating an explosive or brandishing a weapon. Ellie dashed after Ozzy toward the organizers' makeshift tent area, where race organizers, media crews, and sponsors had set up temporary shelters. Large tables were laden with merchandise, bins filled with medals, leftover water bottles, and other items, while tarps billowed in the breeze, some secured with heavy weights, others flapping wildly and creating distractions. The suspect had ducked behind one of the larger tents, nearly toppling a row of chairs in his haste. Volunteers cried out in alarm as he vaulted over, sending papers scattering to the ground. Ellie and Ozzy pursued him relentlessly, and she caught sight of the sports bag zipper glinting as he clutched it tightly. Unwilling to let go of whatever was inside, they moved to the next tent, where water and nutrition supplies for the runners were stored. Boxes of energy bars were stacked high, and large coolers sat ready to be deployed onto the course. The suspect's escape disrupted volunteers preparing drinks for the athletes, with bottles rolling across the ground and making movement difficult. A cooler of ice tipped over, scattering its contents and sending volunteers into a flurry of activity. Amid the chaos, Ozzy pressed forward, unwavering. The dog deftly maneuvered around obstacles, never losing sight of the target. Realizing he was trapped by shipping containers and parked cars, the suspect suddenly pivoted and darted toward an internal road frequently used by equipment trucks. Ellie immediately recognized the route. If he reached the city streets, he could head straight downtown. Grabbing her radio, her breath ragged, she barked, "Request immediate backup at the East Gate. We need to block him off from reaching downtown." All around them, signs of the marathon's impending start added to the chaos. Through the swirling confusion, Ellie could hear an amplified voice counting down the seconds to the official kickoff. The irony was stark. While runners prepared for their race, an entirely different chase was unfolding behind the scenes. Ozzy stayed hot on the suspect's heels as police units scrambled to intercept. Ellie knew every second counted. If the suspect found an unguarded exit, capturing him in a city as large as Atlanta would be a nightmare. As he maneuvered past a tangle of parked supply trucks near a temporary medical station, the suspect's luck ran out. His shoes slipped on mossy bricks, and the momentum caused the large sports bag he clutched to burst open, spilling its contents in a chaotic jumble. Ozzy halted and focused intently on the spilled items. Racing up with her gun drawn, Ellie swiftly pinned the suspect's arm behind him, pressing him down with a knee. "Stay still," she ordered, her breath heavy from the chase. The man struggled, but was partially winded from his fall. Some nearby medical staff panicked at the commotion, prompting Ellie to shoot them a tense look. "Get back. Secure the area. We don't know what's in that bag." Ozzy's ears pricked forward, and his body tensed as he sniffed the open bag. A low whine, followed by a sharp bark, escaped him, a specific warning that Ellie instantly recognized as a signal of danger. Keeping the suspect pinned to the ground, Ellie quickly reached for her radio. "Suspect apprehended. Request bomb squad and additional units for a potential hazardous device," she said. Locking eyes with the defiant glare of the suspect, she warned, "Don't move," tightening her grip. With her firearm at the ready, she scanned the area for any accomplices while Ozzy maintained his vigilant stance beside the open bag. Every moment counted. If there was even a trace of explosives or chemicals hidden inside, one misstep could prove catastrophic. Slowly, she maneuvered the suspect's arms together and secured his wrists with a zip tie. His muscles tensed in resistance, yet he remained partly subdued, still dazed from his fall. Her heart pounded as her eyes caught sight of several metallic canisters among the spilled contents. Though she couldn't identify them from this distance, they were clearly not standard running gear, filling her with a deep sense of unease. Within minutes, additional officers and bomb squad personnel converged on the scene, establishing a protective barrier to keep bystanders and staff at a safe distance. 2 bomb squad technicians, clad in protective gear, carefully examined the scattered items with handheld detectors. Meanwhile, Ellie questioned the suspect in a firm tone, but he offered no answers, only heavy, clenched tooth breaths. An officer joined her, and together they began a thorough pat-down, checking for any concealed devices. Suddenly, the suspect jerked his shoulder and reached into his back pocket, revealing a small electronic device that suspiciously resembled a detonator or remote trigger. "Watch out!" Ellie shouted. She and the other officer lunged, managing to knock the device from his grasp. It clattered across the ground, spinning to a stop near a vending machine. The bomb squad technicians shouted for caution, and everyone tensed, bracing for an explosion that, thankfully, never came. Amid the chaos, the suspect let out a yell, a signal of some kind, as a bystander dressed as a reporter, camera slung around his neck and press badge flapping, dove into the fray. The newcomer swiftly grabbed the partially closed sports bag and sprinted off, weaving through startled officers. Ozzy pivoted and barked furiously, immediately recognizing that the bag was now in someone else's possession. Spotting this, Ellie shouted, "Stop!" and pointed toward the fleeing figure. At her command, Ozzy took off in pursuit, while the suspect on the ground struggled to rise, only to be held down even further by two officers who secured him tightly. It appeared that the reporter wasn't acting alone. Just as Ozzy closed in, the fake reporter quickly handed the bag to someone wearing a white coat marked medical. The exchange happened in a flash. Yet, Ozzy's nose never wavered. He caught the familiar scent emanating from the bag and immediately fixed his focus on the new individual. The chase surged on, barreling through the crowded grandstand area where families, friends, and local supporters had gathered to cheer the runners. Bright banners fluttered above, and concessions workers came to a sudden halt at the sight of a police dog streaking by. "Clear the way! Police pursuit!" Ellie shouted, nearly colliding with a stack of folding chairs as she sprinted after them. The suspect in the white coat ducked past a row of startled spectators who screamed as they realized something was terribly wrong. At the far end of the stands, beneath an arch labeled International Spectator Gate, the area was packed with tight security lines, translators, and cameras. The suspect paused for a moment, then turned to face Ellie and Ozzy, brandishing a small canister retrieved from the bag. "Stay back," he yelled with a sharp accent. "I'll open it." Terrified screams erupted as people scattered, toppling chairs and diving behind barricades. The suspect's wild eyes darted around in search of an escape route. If the contents were toxic, even a small release could endanger many lives. Ellie slowed to a halt about 10 feet away, her breath ragged and her gun drawn. She saw Ozzy coiled like a spring, ready to leap on command. However, with so many civilians in the vicinity, the risk of stray gunfire was enormous. One misplaced shot at the canister could trigger disaster. Amid the chaos, another authoritative voice barked an order. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, nobody move." A tall man in a dark windbreaker emblazoned with the large yellow FBI letters approached swiftly, flashing his badge. He stepped up beside Ellie, his gaze fixed firmly on the suspect. "Local law enforcement alerted us to a potential terrorist cell," he whispered in a low tone to Ellie. "And it appears we've found them." Ellie nodded grimly. The suspect's threats and the presence of unusual chemical containers all pointed to a planned attack. In this critical moment, any misstep could have unleashed a dangerous situation upon an unsuspecting crowd. The suspect clutched the canister as if poised to break it open, and Ellie's mind raced with urgency. She noticed Ozzy crouching nearby, waiting for her signal. A single nod from her could send him charging forward. The FBI agent leaned in and whispered, "We can't let him open that. We have to neutralize him fast." Without a moment's hesitation, Ellie barked, "Ozzy, go!" In an instant, the dog sprang into action, his muscles and fur a blur of motion. Startled, the suspect barely had time to react before Ozzy clamped his jaws around his forearm, forcing him to let go of the canister. It hit the pavement with a hollow clang, rolling a short distance without breaking. Ellie and the FBI agent lunged forward, pinning the suspect to the ground as Ozzy maintained his unyielding grip. The man struggled and shouted in a foreign language, but Ozzy's training proved too strong. Within moments, additional officers arrived, swiftly disarming the suspect and retrieving both the bag and the canister. The shaken crowd watched from a distance, some recording the dramatic conclusion of a chase that had all too nearly turned tragic. Specialized hazmat and chemical detection teams soon examined the contents of the sports bag, uncovering various chemicals, fuses, and instructions for assembling toxic smoke bombs. It became evident that the conspirators had planned to detonate these devices among the marathon crowd, aiming to create chaos, panic, and possibly severe casualties. Exhausted, Ellie sank onto a low barrier exhaling shakily as Ozzy sat beside her, his chest heaving from exertion. An officer approached, handing Ellie a water bottle while setting one down for Ozzy. Grateful but still racing with adrenaline, Ellie murmured her thanks. Officers then cuffed and removed the primary suspect and his accomplices, their plan foiled thanks to Ozzy's alertness and the swift coordination between Ellie's team and the FBI. Over the event's loudspeaker, an announcement declared the area secure. As tension gradually subsided, Ellie carefully checked Ozzy for injuries. Aside from a few minor scrapes on his paws, he appeared fine, ever vigilant, and scanning for lingering threats. In the aftermath, local news stations buzzed with updates about the foiled plot, and eyewitness accounts described the frantic chase in vivid detail. Amid a flurry of questions from fellow officers and journalists, one reporter remarked, "You and Ozzy saved countless lives today." Ellie, deflecting most of the praise, simply replied, "Ozzy sensed something was off from the start. I just did my job and trusted my partner." A week later, the Atlanta Police Department hosted a ceremony to honor those who played a pivotal role in averting the disaster. During the event, the chief of police specifically mentioned Ozzy, the brave K-9 who first detected the suspect, and the crowd erupted into applause. Ozzy's handler, Ellie, was awarded the Medal of Valor, while Ozzy received a special medal attached to his K-9 collar, celebrating his courage and unwavering loyalty. The ceremony was deeply emotional, filled with heartfelt speeches of gratitude from colleagues, and a series of photos showcasing Ellie and Ozzy in action, protecting the city together. Even as normalcy slowly returned, Ellie held her bond with Ozzy in high regard, a living testament to the strength of trust and the fighting spirit that keeps the city safe. If you like this story, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel so we can send you more interesting stories.